Okay, so today we'll understand the concept of normal distribution for CFA Level 1 exam preparation. Let's start.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to do something pretty cool. We're going to take the art of investing, with all its guesswork and uncertainty, and turn it into a science. We're going to explore a powerful tool that helps you move past just guessing and start understanding the real probabilities behind your investments. Let's dive in. All right, let's just cut right to the chase. This is the question, isn't it? It's the one that probably keeps you up at night if you're an investor. It's that fundamental fear we all have when we put our hard-earned money on the line. But what if? What if you could actually put a number on that risk? So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that big, scary question of uncertainty. Then I'll introduce you to this beautiful, elegant solution called the bell curve. We'll learn a kind of golden rule for investors that makes this super easy, and then we'll put it all into practice, first with a single stock and then with a whole portfolio. And by the end, you'll see how this completely changes the way you think about investing. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do you tame all that uncertainty? I mean, the market feels chaotic, right? Well, financial pros don't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They have a real method for bringing some order to that chaos. And their secret weapon? It all comes down to this incredibly simple but powerful shape, the normal distribution. You've probably heard it called the bell curve. This little curve is the key to mapping out the probability of pretty much any investment return you can think of. So what is this thing, really? Well, you can think of it like a map that shows you how data, like say annual stock returns, tends to bunch up around a central average, or mean. It's basically a picture of the most likely outcomes. The real magic is in its shape. You see how it's perfectly symmetrical? That means the chance of a return being way above average is pretty much the same as it being way below average. And see how most of the results are clustered right there in the middle, near the average? That predictability is exactly what makes it such an incredible tool for investors. Now, here's the best part. You do not need a PhD in statistics to use this. Seriously, there's this amazing shortcut. You can think of it as an investor's cheat sheet, really, that gives us incredible insight without any of the complicated math. And this is it. This is the empirical rule, and it is our golden ticket. It tells us that for any investment that follows this pattern, about 68% of the returns will fall within one step, or what we call a standard deviation from the average. If you go out 2 steps, you capture 95% of all the likely returns. And 3 steps, you've got a whopping 99.7% of all outcomes covered. This simple rule is everything. Okay, enough with the theory, right? Let's get our hands dirty and see how this actually works in the real world. We'll start by looking at the potential return of just a single stock. So let's imagine you've got your eye on a stock. Historically, its average return is about 12%, and its standard deviation is 4%. Now, don't let that term scare you. That's just a fancy way of saying how much the return typically wobbles or bounces around that 12% average. It's our measure of risk. Okay, so here is our mission. Using what we know, what are the odds, the actual probability that this stock is going to underperform and give us a return that's less than 8%? This is the kind of practical question we can finally answer. And you know what? The process is surprisingly simple. It's just 2 steps. That's it. First, we figure out how many of those steps, or standard deviations, an 8% return is from our 12% average. That number is called a z-score. Then we just find the probability that goes with it. And the answer is about 16%. So how do we get that? Well, think about it. An 8% return is exactly 4% below the 12% average. That's 1 standard deviation below the mean. Now, remember our golden rule. 68% of stuff happens within 1 standard deviation. That means the other 32% has to happen outside of it, right? Way out in the 2 tails of the curve. And since the curve is a perfect mirror image, you just chop that 32% in half, and boom, a 16% chance of the return landing in that lower tail, below 8%. Okay, that was pretty cool for just 1 stock. But this is where the tool gets really powerful. When we zoom out from a single tree and look at the whole forest, our entire investment portfolio. So let's switch gears. Now we're looking at your whole portfolio. Let's say its expected average return is 10%, with a standard deviation or a risk level of 5%. And now, for the million-dollar question, the one that really, really matters. What is the actual statistical probability that this portfolio will lose money? In other words, what are the chances its return will be less than 0? And guess what? We use the exact same simple two-step process. No new math, no tricks. We just need to figure out how many standard deviations away a 0% return is from our 10% average. The probability is just 2.5%. How? Well, a 0% return is exactly 10% below our 10% average. Since our standard deviation is 5%, that's exactly 2 standard deviations away. Back to our golden rule, 95% of returns fall within 2 standard deviations. That leaves just 5% of returns way out in the tails. We divide that 5% by 2, and there's our answer, a 2.5% chance of falling in that lower tail and losing money. Now just pause for a second and think about how powerful that is. We just went from a vague, shapeless fear of losing money to a concrete number, a 2.5% chance. This is how you professionally assess risk. Now you can look at that number and decide, hey, am I comfortable with that? Or maybe I need to adjust things. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here, because this isn't just about plugging numbers into a formula. It's about a complete and total shift in your mindset as an investor. This tool lets you stop wondering and start asking really specific, powerful questions. What's the probable range my return will fall in? How risky is this investment, really? And what are the actual, specific chances that I might lose money? And that's the real game changer. It's the difference between being a passenger, just crossing your fingers and hoping for a good return, and being the pilot, understanding the probability of getting one. You're moving from guessing to knowing. So you've got the tool now. You have the foundational concept that professionals use every single day to quantify risk and make informed decisions. So the only question left for you is, what risk in your own financial life are you ready to stop guessing about and start truly understanding?